One critically important part of the application process is collecting letters of recommendation. I'm going to touch on several key points in this session. It's a long one, so buckle up and grab a drink. The key points are: who should you ask for letters? How many letters should you collect? When should you ask for those letters? How should you choose which letters to use? When is a letter too old? And what if you notice a gap in your collective letters? All right, so let's dive in. In one of my blog posts, I go into depth about whether or not I believe you tell your boss when you're looking for a job. I'll give you the short version here. Unless there's a very specific and very compelling reason that is outside of the norm, I believe you should tell your boss that you're looking for a job. I know there is the potential that your search will be used against you in the future, but in my experience, and that of those I have researched this topic with, I've found that this is very unlikely. Imagine how you would feel if you do not get the job, your boss finds out that you are looking for another job without them knowing, and you must return to your current job. Is the small benefit of not telling your boss worth the hurt feelings that you will need to overcome in the future? Or, in the best case scenario, how will they feel when they find out that you are searching for a job without you doing the courtesy of letting them know? Why am I talking about this now? Well, because the first item on our list is who should you ask for letters? I've read at least 1,000 principal and assistant principal applications and more than 2,000 letters of recommendation. I've come to value a letter from your boss over letters from others, so it's important that you get one if you can get a high quality one. And of course, you can only get one if they know that you are looking. All right, so let's talk about who you should ask for letters. Completed applications typically require 3 letters of recommendation. The letters from those applying for their first principal or assistant principal position are typically from their current principal, their current superintendent, a district office administrator, their current assistant principal, a former colleague teacher who is now an administrator, a specialist teacher on their campus or supporting multiple campuses, a colleague teacher on the same campus, and a university advisor. I have ranked these groups in the order of the importance I give to each of them as I'm conducting paper screening. Depending on the applicant's current position, I adjust the top 3 groups. If a candidate is a teacher or assistant principal on a school site, I would give the most credence to the principal, as they know the candidate best. If the candidate is working in a small district office under the supervision of the superintendent, then I would give the most credence to the superintendent's perspective. If the candidate is working in the district office or supporting multiple sites and is under the supervision of their supervisor at the district office, then I would give their supervisor the most credence. I'm sure you can see the pattern. I give the most credence to a letter from the candidate's supervisor. Unfortunately, the 2 categories I give the least credence to are the university supervisor. Sorry to all you university supervisors out there, I know you have to write a lot of these. And to a colleague teacher on the same campus. In my experience, university advisors write a lot of these letters and have to say good things about the people they're writing about. I've yet to read one that wasn't overwhelmingly positive. And in my experience, colleague teachers all too often do not know what someone needs to be a successful administrator. Of course, there are exceptions. As an example, there are teachers who are so highly respected that a letter from them would be well received within their district. So this is a long answer to a short question. Who should you get letters from? My suggestion is that you get letters from the following people: your current principal, your superintendent, a district office administrator, your current assistant principal, a former colleague teacher who is now an administrator, a specialist teacher on your campus or supporting multiple campuses, and others who know your work, values, and potential very well. While I know every candidate will not be able to get a letter from each of these people, I suggest you use this list as a starting point and try to get letters from at least 4 people if at all possible. Why at least 4? That's a great question, and let's delve into that now. So, how many people should you ask for letters? As I just shared, I suggest you get letters from at least 4 people for many reasons. Some of the most important reasons are to ensure that you have a choice in which letters you include in your application. If you have just 3 letters and 3 are required, you will be forced to use those 3. And I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit. It's also possible that not everyone you ask to write a letter will provide that letter by your deadline. Another thing to think about is that not everyone is good at writing letters of recommendation, and even though someone might have the right title, they may not write a letter that serves you well. Some folks might write letters that are good for one specific job, but not good for another one. Other writers might be the right person for one job, but not for a different job. So I would always rather have extra letters and not need them than need a letter and not have it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about when you should ask for letters. All right, so now you know who you're gonna ask for your letters, but when is the right time to ask? In my experience, the right time to ask is as soon as you know that you will need a letter. This gives the writer the maximum time to spend on your letter. At minimum, I recommend giving at least 2 weeks of notice to someone you need a letter from. I have found that 3 weeks to a month seems to be the sweet spot. I've also found that providing a deadline, typically a week before the application is due, and a copy of your resume really helps the writer draft the best letter possible. I need to share that the sad truth is that some people, while well-intended, are not responsive. I am still waiting for a letter that I asked for more than a year ago. I've sent several reminders and I've been assured that they will get to it. I'm not holding my breath, and it happens sometimes. Okay, so how should you choose which letters to use? If you have just 3 letters, your decision is easy. You use them all. If you have more than 3, then you have a decision to make. A good starting point is the job posting itself. Does it require 3 letters of recommendation, or does it require a minimum of 3 letters? If it's the former, then you get to pick the 3 that you believe will help you to get this job. If it is the latter, you need to decide if adding more than 3 will help. So let's assume for a minute that the application requires that you submit 3 letters of recommendation. In this case, I suggest you review your letters to determine their relative strength as it pertains to the job for which you're applying and who wrote the letters. When you read the letters you've collected, read them from the perspective of the paper screener charged with deciding if you are worthy of an interview. Which 3 letters paint the clearest picture of you as a potential principal or assistant principal in their system based upon the job posting? If you're in a situation where you can submit more than 3 letters, you need to balance the ability to do so with the knowledge that people completing paper screening are often reading many applications and will only spend so much time on each person's packet. I recommend that you stick with 3 unless you have 4 really strong letters, or the 4th letter adds something that the other 3 do not. I do not suggest ever including more than 4. All right, so let's talk about when a letter is too old. Unfortunately, even with all of the hard work, we don't always get our dream job the first time we apply. It took me a couple years to land my first administrative position. During my search, some of my letters got a couple of years old. Is a couple of years old too old? Well, my answer is probably not, but at the same time, I do my best to ensure that my letters are no more than a year old. I've often asked those who wrote me letters more than a year ago to provide me with an updated version, even if only the date was updated. It's best if your letters are dated within a year of your application, with rare exception. Having all of your letters more than a year old indicates that you've been applying for jobs and been overlooked for at least a year. I suggest that you avoid highlighting that for the paper screener, if at all possible. There are occasions when an older letter is acceptable. Typically, this is when you're applying for a job in a role that you've served in before, and the person writing it attests to your success in that role. Or when the person who wrote your letter is not available to provide an updated letter, and whose voice resonates so loudly that the importance of having their letter outweighs the age of the letter. On the topic of the age of letters, I need to strongly encourage you to avoid undated letters at all cost. They come across as sneaky or lazy, and as you might guess, sneaky or lazy do not play out well in the selection process. All right, what if you notice a gap in your collective letters? There have been times when upon reviewing my letters, I noticed a gap or a missing perspective. That gap could be anything. It could be your support for teachers or parents. It could be that you have a sense of humor. It could be your commitment to serving all students. When you notice a gap, I think it's okay to reach out to those trusted references and ask if they are comfortable adding a sentence or a paragraph. Sometimes that can make all of the difference in making it into that all-important interview. Collecting letters from the right people, ensuring that they are fresh and paint a clear picture of you as a potential candidate are all essential in the selection process. Oh, and when you're ready to submit them, please remember to submit them as PDF documents. Whew, that was a lot. I hope that it was helpful to you.